Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Welcome to my curly haired layer. Do you think my hair is too curly today? I feel very wild and I feel very tropical in this room. I brought so many plants in here today because I felt like they needed more light. They needed a little bit more love. So maybe you are feeling that way. Maybe I'm feeling that way a little bit. I feel like there are so many beautiful and gorgeous things that are happening in life, in my life right now. And I don't know if I'm really taking like as much time as I need to be enjoying them, to really be like present in the goodness. And I feel like so much of that is a reflection of how much darkness that I was in for so many years, that it's almost like when you live in a cave and a beam of light shines in and it stings and it burns. It's just like too bright and you have to learn how to like acclimate to the light once more. I feel like I, and maybe you, we are in a little bit of that phase as well. I feel like we have to learn to allow ourselves to sunbathe, to sit in the light past the point where we get uncomfortable, because that's the point where normally we'd be dragged back into the darkness. And I feel like so much of what Spirit is talking to me about right now is making like small adjustments and shifts in our focus and in our behavior in order to like add momentum to the goodness, to let the good times roll. I guess that's like the name of this message is, can we let the good times roll, even if they appear in like the smallest little fraction? Can we focus on that little fraction, that sliver of goodness, long enough to watch it expand? This deer has been following me around for days. I've been seeing deer in fields. I'm seeing them on the side of the road. They're coming up in movies. They're coming up in my different decks, all of my different cards. And deer to me, they really speak to the gentility of the female spirit. For so many years, I felt like I had to be like a panther or like a tiger. I was very much seated within my feminine rage and my power and my ability, even the necessity, honestly, to defend myself against whatever was out there in the world, whoever was kind of fixed against me. And I was in that position for such a long time, which in truth is like a really holy place to be, to have your own back after years of going through difficulty and saying, no, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to advocate for myself. I'm going to sit in my rage. I'm going to sit in my strength. But how do we disembark from that period and allow ourselves to reintegrate sunlight and sensitivity and gentleness back into the fold, so that way we're not always living on life's cutting edge? One of the messages that have been coming out really strongly for me is the removal and the detouring of monitoring negative, judgmental spirits. And in particular, this has been manifesting for me through dead insects. Typically, when we're talking about like monitoring spirits, they oftentimes come through a feeling of being like watched, feeling a sense of like judgment or condemnation. I do believe that the divine will like convict you, and it will like convict your heart if there's something that you need to change, if you need to evolve, if you need to grow, if you need to let something go, if you need to practice kindness or forgiveness. But I don't believe that the spirit ever comes upon us with an energy of condemnation. I feel like that is such a human thing that we like to do, is to kind of condemn and to judge and to punish one another, to punish even ourselves at times. But so often, in addition to that feeling of condemnation, that feeling of being watched, is often the watchers themselves. And they'll come through as little flies, little insects. And of course, you check to see if you left a packet of sugar out. You check the kitchen drain. You make sure that like things are spick and span. But sometimes there is an appearance of these little buzzing, these little flying, little monitoring spirits. And for me, they've been manifesting as dead. I have been finding these little dead flies, these little dead beetles, like these little dead insects kind of all over the place in like these strange little spots. And the way that the spirit was talking to me about it was that because so many of us are doing what we have like come here to do, that we're almost getting boring. We're not taking the bait, like energetically, we're not falling into traps, into low vibrational energy. And so because of that, the energies that are used to observing, feeding off of our stress, our fear, our anxiety, our confusion, you may be finding that confusion is slowly but surely starting to leave the picture as well. And you're coming into a softer kind of clarity. It's not bright and it's not stark, but it's sort of like this quiet knowing is returning to us as confusion, as fear, as distraction, as like even really like petty concerns are really starting to fall by the wayside, which means that we are not low-hanging fruit anymore. We are positioning ourselves higher upon the tree, let's say. We're no longer leaking energy in the way that we used to, which makes us less of a food source for low vibrational energy, for monitoring spirits, for people who don't like us. Just not easy pickings anymore is like essentially the way that the energy is felt by me. And you may notice that there is less resistance, less of that feeling of being watched or being condemned. There still is like a fly at the window, this kind of like poking that I'm sensing just to test like our limits and our boundaries. Are we available for nonsense? Are we available for fear and for confusion? But most of us are not, or certainly not in the way that we used to be. And because of this, I feel like a lot of these judgmental, monitoring energies are bored. They're bored with us. We are no longer a reliable food or energy source for them. And they're being detoured. They're being turned around and forced to go find another resource to feed off of. And that may be manifesting for you as also dead bugs or insects, as you sensing less resistance or less negative eyes on things like your social media, you at work. Like I just feel like a sense of calm and peace start to overtake the environment. But the question remains is, are you available for a new focus as well? Now that judgmental energies, monitoring spirits may be taking their focus off of you, are you able to then take your focus off of them? When you live so long in survival mode, when you live feeling like you are being watched or you are being harassed, it becomes second nature to like look over your own shoulder just to make sure that like no one's following you. And there's a sense in the spirit here of that being a survival strategy, a very successful tactic that helped us keep ourselves safe for a very long time. But now it may be a habit that is distracting to the future momentum, to allowing the good times to keep on rolling. And so it's the idea of, are we able to take our eyes off of our bullies for long enough to really start focusing and harnessing on our allies, on our friends, on the energies, on the spirits, on the work that is before us, that is positive, that is productive, and that is growing and leaning in the direction that like we really want it to. We pulled this camel spirit for this week, and I feel like this is really speaking to a replenishment of our resources. Of course, we are looking at things like money and material comforts when it comes to our resources. And so some of you might actually be really guided, even if you're kind of low on funds, to do something nice for yourself this week. Maybe you get your hair done, maybe you get your nails done, maybe you get yourself a sweet little treat, just like something you maybe normally wouldn't kind of splurge on. It feels like you might be guided to this week to really like treat yourself in a way that you haven't in a while. But the camel takes long journeys, usually through environments that aren't like the most supportive, like a desert. And you too might be looking out at like the road ahead of you and feeling really excited for the adventure ahead, really excited to like tap into a new story, but also recognizing that like you don't necessarily have the energy or the positivity or the confidence or the enthusiasm to really like rise and perform and show up at the level that you really want to. And I feel like this camel is definitely asking and advising us this week to take some time to replenish our resources, even if that resource is our focus. If we're so used to looking for a problem, looking for the problem makers, then we may have to replenish our eyes this week. I almost see like eye washes or like eyes watering to sort of symbolically indicate that like our vision is being cleared, so that way we can see things that again are more positive, are more productive, that are more life-giving to us. We may need more rest this week. We may need more self-care. We may need more beautification if that's the thing that makes us feel really confident and energized. We may even want to be dropping sort of dead weight this week, similar to those flies. So you might be really guided to do like a digital detox or like a digital clean out, I want to say, going through old pictures, old feeds, stuff you used to post, like privating stuff, cleaning out your follower list, cleaning out who you're following, right? Just like creating spaces that feel like they're fresh and feel like they're primed for new creation, new exploration, for you to like enter in a new energy. I also feel like there's something about sleep here, nighttime routine, sleep hygiene. We may really want to get to bed earlier this week, drinking more water like a camel fills its hump. We may want to be mindful about cleaning our sheets this week. If you don't know this about me, as like a little hearth witch, which is basically like a house witch, I am so serious about like the hygiene and like the spiritual sanctity of my bedroom. I wash my sheets multiple times a week. I put on different color sheets depending on like what it is I'm doing. I have like special essential oil sprays to keep the energy nice and sweet and clear and loving and like whatever it is that I want to do. You might want to do a little something like that if you haven't. It can be really fun energetically to work with the energy of your home, to work with the energy of your sleep, of your dream world, much more intentionally. So often we pour a lot of our energy into things like money manifestations, romance manifestations, which like I'm not going to fault anyone for. I'm a rising Libra, so I am a lover girl through and through. But when we as mystics have the ability to pour so much more of our energy into our homes, into our health, into our art, into our relationships with our spirits, like we get so much more than earthly riches. Yes, we get sort of the fruits of the spirit too, which are really worth their weight in gold, brick by brick. And so I'm really just getting the energy of like sprucing things up this week, cleaning out clutter physically, digitally, getting more sleep, drinking more water, making sure our sheets are really clean and crisp, and just really focusing on the intention and the hygiene around recovery, around reset, around relief. I'm also loving that the peacock is appearing for us this week, because the peacock speaks a lot to being intuitively guided, particularly when it comes to our relationships. Peacocks are absolutely gorgeous, and they put on these huge performances in order to attract mates. And it feels like there's a question there of, one, asking ourselves if there are times when we are overly performing, if we are overly presenting ourselves in such a way because we think it will attract community, it will attract followers, it will attract friends, it will attract a lava, it will attract anything, as opposed to allowing ourselves to be more comfortably situated in ourselves and our truth and our energy, and allowing that to pull people towards us. There's also, on an equal yet opposite hand, there's a question of if there are times when we are underperforming, when we are under showing up as a way to avoid the intimacy of attracting and pulling in community that we have to participate in, of attracting a leva, of attracting friends. Are there ways in which we are cloaking and hiding ourselves out of the fear of the past, or out of fear of future rejection, where we're actually pushing away the opportunity to connect, to become intimate, to be vulnerable with each other emotionally? I feel like this is a really good week to think about moving forward what kind of relationships, what kind of communities, what kind of friendships, what kind of sisterhoods, what kind of love we want to be in, and how can we show up for that. A white butterfly is dancing across the window. So how do we show up for those relationships that we want? How can we participate more? How can we be open and ready and receptive for friendship, for community, in the ways that like we want it to come to us? Are we available for that? There's also a final question with this peacock that speaks to devotion. Peacocks are often a very sacred animal to marriage goddesses like Juno and Hera, and There is a question here about the ways in which we may abandon ourselves in devotion to a person, to a god, to a spirit, to a dream or a pathway. And are our relationships, are our dreams, are our spiritual practices, are they really holy? Are they really sanctified? If we have to make ourselves sick over them, if we have to abandon ourselves, if we are so devoted to that person, that place, that cause, that we completely forget about our own health, our own alignment. I also heard sobriety as well. Are those things really for us? Is that really our dream pathway? Is that really our dream friend or our dream partner or our dream spiritual practice if it makes us lose all of our feathers in order to keep it? Also, a question here of commitment. Are there ways in which past harms, are there ways in which relationships and commitment has been modeled for us in the past that is preventing us from fully committing or from fully devoting ourselves to a dream, to a purpose, to a pathway? And is that contributing to our inability to really send it, to really give 110%, to really like put our back into it? Is there actually a fear of commitment here that is causing a lack of success when it comes to our dreams, when it comes to our relationships? And that kind of brings up this other idea of jealousy. In a lot of Hera, specifically her mythology, it has to do with her being very jealous and her very vengeful because of her husband's infidelity, right? And so it just brings up this idea of jealousy, that sometimes we may see someone living the life that we want to live, or doing something that we want to do, or being or looking in a way that we want to, and we can feel really jealous about that. And I think it's such a normal human emotion, but sometimes the idea that other people may want or are competing for the thing that we want, that sometimes feeling jealous of what another person is or looks like or has, it may actually like prevent us from fully showing up in our own lives to obtain those things, and maybe sometimes even like act out in ways that are counterintuitive or counterproductive to the lives that we want to leave. There's definitely a little bit of a consideration this week of how we personally like want to navigate feeling less than, or feeling we're comparing ourselves, or feeling jealous in some way. And can we, it's almost like an invitation to transmute. Yeah, I would say that it's an invitation this week to really seriously look at the places where we do compete, where we do compare, where we do get a little jealous, and find a way to alchemize them into confidence, into value, into personal power. So that way we are at the very least just running the race alongside everyone else as opposed to against anyone else. And last but not least, we have this zebra. When I think of zebras, the first thing that I think about is safety through conformity. The reason why zebras look so identical is that it makes it easier for them to blend in with the rest of the pack, especially when there are predators around. Sometimes we don't want to be a poppy. We don't want to be a superstar. Sometimes we just want to be safe. We want to blend. We want to conform because our individuality has put us in the line of fire in the past, right? Sometimes you stick out, but you stick out like a sore thumb, and it makes it really easy for people to find you and bother you and give you a hard time about all of the things that make you beautiful and make you unique because they don't understand them. And so I also feel like there's a lot of questioning and reckoning this week about the ways in which we do intentionally try to blend in to keep ourselves small in order to keep ourselves safe. And how is that preventing us from making a splash, is how that wants to come through, making a splash or making an impact in the way that we really want. I'm also noticing just how big the ears are on the zebra. It almost feels like he has elephant ears. Like, they are so big. And so I also wonder if there's maybe too much of an emphasis or too much of a focus on what's popular, on what's trending, sort of the ear to the ground, what people are doing, what people are looking for, that is also preventing like more of an individual. Wonder if it's preventing some individuality, some of your idiosyncrasy, some of the things that really like make you you and make me me, if they are preventing us from really like allowing them to kind of sparkle and shine. There might be too much playing to the crowd. There might be too much creating for the audience as opposed to creating for oneself. Eagles are also coming forward really strongly in my mind's eye right now. And when I think of eagles, I think of liberation. I think of freedom. They have a certain amount of elegance. And so I wonder if there is a bit of like an awkward growing pain stage that a lot of us are going through right now when it comes to our actualization, when it comes to our personal expression, when it comes to our art, when it comes to our businesses, it comes to, you know, our platforms, when it comes to who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world. Maybe it's been so long since we have organically really allowed ourselves to do that or felt safe enough to do that, that we're a little out of practice. And maybe what we want to create, maybe who we are, maybe how we want to express is also a bit different now than it used to be the last time we let ourselves do so. So maybe there is kind of an awkward, frizzy hair, buck tooth, stretch marks, I'm 14 and I don't know how to pilot my own body type of energy that like we're bringing to the people, that like we're bringing to the art, that we're bringing to ourselves right now, that feels a little dopey, that like feels a little silly, and it doesn't feel as like polished and gorgeous as like we want it to be. And in that discomfort, in the stretch marks, in the growing pain, we're getting like a little bit spooked and freaked out, and we're kind of running back into our conformity, into what we think like keeps us safe or seems reliable, even if it isn't like bringing us anything new, even if it isn't helping us expand, even if it isn't really satisfying us like in any way as people, as creatives, spiritually, productively in our lives. Like, and so I just wonder if so much of like this zebra this week is really asking us if we can maybe do a little bit more self-care, a little bit more personal replenishment in order to get over the hump of discomfort, the hump of those awkward growing pains, the hump of feeling even, again, a little jealous or envious of people who maybe have already made it through those awkward growing pains and are really in their flow now, long enough to allow ourselves to also mature into like the fullness of our blossom. And this is definitely a week that feels like it's primed for imperfect practice. That maybe you want to write, maybe you want to be a reader, maybe you want to make videos, maybe you want to paint, maybe you want to start a business, maybe you want to become a teacher, maybe you want to be an artist, you want to sing, like whatever it is that like you want to do in this whole big beautiful wide world, that like maybe what it is that you want to do, maybe you need a little practice, imperfect practice, writing something that doesn't sound exactly the way you want it to sound, or filming something that doesn't come out entirely the way you had envisioned it in your mind, and learning to embrace like the discomfort and sometimes the dissatisfaction of making the art, which is messy and it is imperfect. Again, long enough that we can like really build the nest that we want to build, but they take a little bit of time. And so I'm just wondering again if like imperfect practice, allowing ourselves to get our hands dirty, allowing ourselves to make mistakes, allowing ourselves to go, you know what, that didn't totally turn out how I wanted to, but I tried, at least I got some hours on the field, and really allowing that to begin the process of building more confidence, of building more experience, of building more familiarity. Sometimes confidence, it comes from familiarity, going, I've been here a bunch of days, I've done this a bunch of times, I've tripped over my feet, I've stuck my landings, it's been good, it's been bad, but I've been here every day regardless, rain or shine. And that consistency, that is what builds confidence. But maybe this week we should allow ourselves the gift of imperfect practice, of rest and good hydration and clean sheets, of being able to show ourselves grace for our petty jealousy, for our insecurity, and find ways to alchemize it into value, into personal power, to not rush through the process, but instead to hold its hand and be really present as a friend to yourself and your own spirit as you're building a bridge to the other side, as we are learning to slowly but surely step out of the cave and back into the jungle, knowing that like we are worthy of dancing through the treetops like Tarzan. I know this week for me, I really want to work on being more in tune with nature. I have such a beautiful garden in the back, and I feel like I haven't been spending nearly as much time in it, talking to the vegetables, talking to the tomatoes as they're growing, and I really just want to I want some nature bonding time this week. I also feel like there are some books that I've gotten for my personal summer reading list that I haven't dug into as deeply as I wanted to either. So I definitely feel like I want to carve out some time for my mind and for my imagination this week by reading, by allowing myself to be really bored and present in nature, booty in the grass. This week, I also really want to work on not trying to control things that are not mine to control. I don't want to micromanage the universe this week in a way that I have a fire moon. And so sometimes I find myself really impassioned and very forceful with my will. And so I really want to work on not doing that this week and really allowing myself to not micromanage the universe and seeing what it brings me and being a happy recipient to what arrives at my door, and not feeling the need to constantly have my hands on the steering wheel, because sometimes I don't even know where I'm going. How am I I don't even know where I'm driving to. So sometimes it might be better for me to allow the universe to put me on cruise control. So I think that's what I'm gonna do this week, is I'm gonna try and sit more outside in my garden. I want to try and read more. I have a new book about the young Elizabeth I, so I'm really excited to get into, and I'm going to try to not micromanage the universe. Those are the 3 things that I am working on this week. So let me know, what are the 3 things that you are working on this week that you want to prioritize, that you want to deprioritize? Put them in the comment section. I want to see. I love you so much. If you need anything from me, a little personal session, if you want to join my membership community, that's all going to be in the description box for you below. I love you so much, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.